Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Friday night's edition of Center Stage. I'm Kheri Hines, your host. When police officers take an oath that says, I will respectfully serve the citizens of my community and my police department, I will dedicate myself to the protection of life, property, and the public trust. My integrity, character, and courage will be above reproach, and I will accept no less, from other members of our department. When you hear that or see that, you expect a certain type of character to emerge. That oath was taken directly from the Fort Worth Police Department's website, which I can personally attest to the fact that nothing could be further from the truth. Because I personally have been harassed. Character has been assassinated by this department. My mail has been tampered with. I've seen my car inspection process altered and messed with. My registration for my vehicle messed with. They've scared my neighbors. They followed me across city and state lines. They've messed with a U-Haul that I was renting. They've had another department K-9 unit pull me over. They called in a favor from a JP judge, a local JP judge that ruled against me in a frivolous lawsuit. They've lied to merchants and businesses, which I frequent. They messed with my homestead exemption on my home. They hacked into my emails and websites. And the list just goes on and on. And so to make matters worse, they've even had assistance from the Dallas Police Department, the Memphis and Bartlett Police Department. So what do you do when the lawless is the law? That's my topic tonight. When everything I mentioned up to murder is acceptable, we need our laws changed to protect the citizens from the police. That's what we're talking about tonight, y'all, when the lawless is the law. And I personally use my case for an example because when I thought about the topic for tonight's show, it became suddenly very personal to me because I've dealt with this harassment for the last 3.5 years. My co-host Christopher Burns will tell you part of his story. He's had harassment from the Chicago Police Department as well, so we personally know these things exist. And when we see cases like Eric Garner and Mike Brown and so many others, Sherwal Thomas and Jermaine Darton and so many others, where murder is acceptable, where, you know, murder doesn't even get a slap on the wrist. You know, we saw something recently where an officer was fired because he choked a young man. Even though what he did was wrong, it spoke volumes to the fact that he would get fired for choking a Caucasian man, but an officer, a Caucasian officer, can kill a black man with no consequences. Well, anyway, y'all, that's what we're talking about tonight. I'm a little under the weather, so my co-hosts are going to have to jump in and help me out a little bit tonight, a little bit more. Good evening, AJ. Good evening, Christopher. How are you all this evening?
Doing great, AJ and Kheri.
Well, listen, y'all heard my topic tonight, when the lawless is the law. Christopher, I know you personally had experiences like I have. What did you think when you saw the topic for tonight?
I mean, I thought the topic was right on time. I thought it was very timely because it's, in a sense, absolute truth. Unfortunately, I think there has always been elements of the corruption, distortion, lawlessness, and very callous behavior on the part of our civil authorities and even the government. But I think a lot of the perpetuated lawlessness by the police, in the military we say things roll downhill. The police are able to get away with what they do in the cases of lawlessness, specifically speaking to those cases. There's a lot of reasons, but my top two are it's perpetuated by a lot of the laws that were meticulously put together to insulate those authorities so that when they not only carry out their own agenda, but they carry out the agenda of their superiors, they basically have carte blanche or immunity. And then secondly, things are strategically done because the powers that be have, in their minds, they have very valid reasons for why that they actually want that type of insulation. And with lawlessness, you could essentially commit crimes that if me and you did the same thing under the same set of circumstances, we would go to jail. But what they do is that when a police officer commits a like crime, even if the courts take them to trial and convict them of something, again, the shield may not totally shield them from criminal charges, but again, most of them either do no time or very little time at all. And the standard should never be more for us than it is for the police for committing the same crime. And then that's what we have to keep in mind. If police are supposed to uphold and protect, and they violate that, there should be nothing more or less that they get than if they were not a police officer. But unfortunately, they get preferential treatment.
I agree. AJ, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm saying I don't really see any change for the last hundreds of years, except for the color of the uniform changed and the weapons that they use changed. But it's kind of been the same. And I think what happens is traditionally that's what they call it the good old boy system, because it's a tradition that's been passed down from white to blue. And I don't really think there's a lot changed, but now the interpretation of the law, since we didn't have any of the judges or any of the people on the Supreme Court of color, or I guess that was fending for us. There's no precedent set to change any of the things that's been done so far, because everything is based on what the precedent was.
You know, my thought is this. You know, I've heard other talk show hosts, you know, some of my friends who will say, listen, you know, the people need to get out there and do something, and you know, the people need to rise up. And I would always take the stance that, you know what, no, you know, the peaceful approach. But now, the more and more I see and the longer this is going on, it really makes me wonder. You know, somebody said America was founded on violence. It just kind of makes you wonder sometimes, are they trying to push the people to the point that they push back in that manner? Because I just, you know, when I watched the Mike Brown situation play out like it did, I mean, and every day we're hearing more and more about what happened with the grand jury. Again, this is where the lawless is the law. I mean, Mike McCullough is the top cop in the St. Louis County prosecutor's office. And this guy, you know, I mean, literally he wore 50 hats, one being the defense attorney. You know, we found out that his office gave the grand jury misinformation on, you know, their instructions. You know, we're seeing that he basically intimidated the witnesses. You know, he discredited them. You know, the one lady who was totally crazy, you know, who basically took her whole testimony off of the out of the newspapers, she was considered credible, and everybody else that spoke out against Officer Darren Wilson was discredited by the prosecutor of all people, who's supposed to be working for the victim. So you just wonder, when we continue to see lawlessness in all aspects of what's supposed to be the Justice Department, what can you expect from the people going forward if this continues to be the pattern? I mean, what can we expect? The people are going to rebel.
I think one thing we don't pay attention to is that the TV shows perpetuate what's actually going on. You know how they say art represents life, or life represents art. Because one of the longest running shows in existence that everybody watches, there's like 9 different series of them, Law and Order. Yeah. I stopped watching that show after I saw the 3rd episode, because I saw how they railroad different people, like, I'm going to get you if you don't turn your brother in, you know. And I saw this stuff. I'm like, y'all don't understand that y'all are watching this as entertainment, but this ain't entertainment. This happens every day.
I agree. I mean, and you know, the problem is, you know, when the system doesn't work. First of all, let's just start with, you know, people are told, you know, when the police, you know, come up, you're supposed to treat the police officer in a certain manner, and you're supposed to do whatever he says, and, you know, whatever happens, you just deal with it then, and you sort it out in court. But now we're realizing that the court system is broken too. So not only is the cop crazy that stopped us, but then we're going to have to go to court and deal with a prosecutor that's as crazy as a Bob McCullough. So what is a person to do when you know that the entire process is broken? You know, what do you do? I mean, what do you do? I mean,
well, Kheri, that's a very difficult question to answer because a lot of individuals who are at those crossroads, and even when they want to do the right thing, they have to think about feast or famine. And some individuals that, for all intents and purposes, they know what the real deal is. They know what's really going on. A lot of times it comes down to socioeconomics. A lot of the behavior and the culture of the police, and I will just say not just the police but the civil authorities, because you got to keep something in mind. Even when the police conduct anything, any investigation, when they are authorized for a warrant and then they're going to carry out an action, or they're just driving down a patrol car and they have to respond to things, a lot of what they do is predicated by their superiors. And I mean everybody from the police chief to the police commissioner all the way to the district or the state's attorney. And in a lot of these cases, as police officers are making these decisions, I believe most police officers in all good conscience and good faith are trying to do the right thing based on their training, in some cases split-second decisions. But in a lot of other cases where they have a little bit more time to process what is going on, it's not making a lot of sense or adding up as to why they would be so quick to rush to presumption of drawing a weapon and doing certain things. And unfortunately, again, because most states allow more coverage of police officers. In other words, when a police officer is questionable of their actions, whether it was of a violent nature or just a general complaint, when police officers are investigating themselves, and only themselves, that's a bad thing, number one. Number two, when police officers also know that they have a thing called prosecutorial immunity, which gives them partial and in most cases full immunity, there really is no incentive to do right. And then number three, when police officers rarely get open civil suit or individuals that are suing a police department for wrongful conduct are successful, that further insulates and creates an attitude and a culture of bad behavior. Because if police officers knew that if they did something wrong, that it would be not only called into question, but there was some type of civilian review board that had punitive authority, they change what they do. And I think because a lot of these things have too much carte blanche, even with prosecutors. When McCullough, when he did that, I mean, he should have been disbarred. He should be before charges. But the laws and the scope of the laws that most prosecutors operate within essentially gives them 80 to 90% of the control and the power. And that means that if they just decide they're having a bad day, guess what? They could pretty much indirectly convince a grand jury not to indict. And 9 times out of 10, if there's a case brought before a prosecutor and they don't want to prosecute it, they're pretty much going to get what they want before the grand jury. So that's just, that's another element. But people have to keep these things in mind. A tight-knit relationship. This is not just a prosecutor presenting this to jurors, the grand jury jurors. That's an arm, that's a wing, so everything rolls downhill. But I think that because there's not enough responsibility or accountability, that until that is put back in play in terms of the laws and making inroads and kinks in the armor, that police should not always have full or partial immunity when it's shown and the facts all line up with misconduct.
Let me add something to my intro, y'all, that I forgot to mention. First of all this harassment that I mentioned at the hands of Florida Police Department, I'm not a criminal. I've never had a criminal record. I've never been arrested. I've never even been given a traffic ticket, and I'm well over 20. So that said, if someone who isn't a criminal, doesn't have criminal activity going on at their home, never been in trouble, can be harassed to the degree that I have, just because I do this show, just because I covered a story called the Terrell Thomas shooting, justified or homicide, where the Fort Worth Police Department killed a young man with 3 kids in the backseat of of his SUV while he was driving. All of that said, something's wrong with the system and is very, very broken. When jaywalkers are treated like hardened criminals and shot dead in the street for jaywalking, something's wrong with the system. And, ever since our president has been in office, black people have been complaining that he has not done enough for black people. And before anybody screams at me, I love our president. I really do. And someone said to me about 2 years ago, well, black people have never come up with anything to ask for, as a group. Other people, the Hispanic people, they had issues with, immigration, so they asked for that. The gay people had issues, so they asked for gay marriage. But black people have never come up with anything. Well, let me be the first person to go on record to say black folks need to say to the president, we demand by executive order that you put something on the books that says all this police killing, this police brutality, it's got to stop. That should be our request. If we can't come up with anything else before he leaves office, let's put that demand on our president, that we got to have him do more. We got to have Eric Holder do more. And I love them both. I respect the fact that, that they're both African Americans and they've been able to reach the level of success that they have. But we need more from them, and we need them to do it now. And I think if black people have never come up with their demand, y'all, that's the demand. Let me go on record, tonight, December 19, 2014, and say that's what black folks need to put on petitions. That's what we need to get working towards, is that something gets put on the books ASAP. We can't even wait for it to be heard before Congress and all that. No, we need it by executive order, that there has to be something put in place that says there's consequences, whether you be a cop or a civilian. If you kill somebody, it better make sense or you're going to jail. Period. I mean, and we should start fighting toward that. The marching, I commend every protester who's got out there on the front line. But you know what? Protesting without a good demand is just exercise. Demand that we get something on the books to change the laws ASAP before there's another Eric Garner, before there's another Mike Brown, before there's another Oscar Grant, before there's another Terrell Thomas, before there's another Jermaine Darden. We really got to do more than just protest, because you know what? Going out and getting pepper sprayed and going out and getting tear gas and not getting anything for it is crazy. I mean, I'm sorry. If I ever get tear gas, trust me, if I ever get pepper sprayed, I'm going to get something for it. And that's all I'm saying. I'm going to the phone lines. Area code 314-853. Good evening, you're on Center Stage.
Good evening to everybody. Is Gerald Christmas on here?
No, he's not.
Oh, well, I asked a question the other day, and I ask you, it's always been said that no one is above the law. Do you believe that?
No, I don't anymore.
No. And do you think that this, like I always say, this system was not set up to be fair, and it's not going to be fair. You said what that Obama's not doing anything for black folks. It wasn't set up to do anything for black folks, and it's not going to do anything for black folks. Now, you voted.
There you go with the negativity. We have it. You know what? Sometimes, listen to this, though. Sometimes you receive not, you ask not. We have not made a demand as a group. We got 13
why haven't you?
And I know I interrupted you, but let me finish this point. 13% of the population to come together as a united front and say, we demand that you put something on the books by executive order that covers us in the event that there's another shooting, there's another hole administered, that's been banned on somebody and killed somebody. We got to have something on the books, Mr. President. We helped to put you in office, and you owe us that. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Have you ever tried that?
You know what?
Answer that. Have you ever tried it?
No. Okay, listen to that. Did you hear what I said? 13%.
Now, did you hear what you told me? Now, have you tried that? You telling people what they should do. Have you tried it?
Okay, did you hear me, and I called him Old Timer, y'all. Old Timer, did you hear me say 13%?
You call me anything you want to call me. That shows what your problem is, too. But I'm just saying, all of these years, all of these, do you think this system was set up to be fair?
No.
Well, what makes you think it's going to be fair?
I don't think that we will ever get maybe to the point where it's just going to be equal, but at the same time, just because something is not set up and something, I think we can all agree that the cards, in a sense, are stacked against us. But in the same breath, if I'm going to stay here, I'm not going to not do anything. And I think in a unified front, more so than maybe we've done in the past, and as you can see, a lot of people, they're not just protesting. They're not just marching. They're actually making demands. A lot of these people are doing everything from getting the people who traditionally did not vote to at least get registered, consider voting. I would rather try to do something than to sit back and say we can't do anything. I'm not saying you're not doing anything, but I will say this. We had we just basically briefly spoke about just the socioeconomic conundrum. We may not ever be able to be as big as Walmart, but I guarantee you this. If the ones of us as black Americans that are socially conscious, that if we come to the table, I believe we could encourage a lot of other individuals that probably just didn't have the motivation to do more than they're doing now, other than just basically gossip and complain. In terms of turning the tides, the president is the president who he is at this point. I don't think that we should let our president or anybody else off easy. Now, as we're doing this collectively, demanding the president to do certain things, we also have things that we can do within ourselves in our own community to make things better for us. If we would galvanize ourselves, and that's another thing. Black people are under a misconception. Most black folks, by and large, do not live in a community where they control their banks, the police, their commerce. They live in a neighborhood. But we have to turn the tides, because I don't want to live in a neighborhood. I want to live in a community. Now, it may not be that I can just affect everybody and turn the tides, but I think a positive attitude to say that if I'm going to stay here in this country and I don't like what is going on, there's certain ways that I think it can be attacked. And so all I'm saying is that if we collectively come together, the ones who are doing things and want to see better lives for ourselves and our children, then I think it's incumbent upon us to do more to make sure that not only do our leadership know about it, but we demand that and we do it in such a way that they cannot say no.
Kheri, can I say something?
Are you through?
Now, Kheri, I think, to me, everybody is blaming President Obama, which is cool. I understand the dilemma. But it's like we voted we voted for sheriff and didn't elect to give him any guns. So I really think I'm saying the system is flawed, but I don't think the system is broke. The system is flawed because we've never truly participated in the system. See, we watched everybody else work the system and decided to let them oversee the system for us. And now we finally want to gain control, and nobody's willing to sit down and vote. You have you got 44 judge positions in Fort Worth, Texas, where they were just encumbered. Nobody had to vote. It was just on the ballot. You didn't have to vote for them or nothing. So we have all these things in the system. So we're talking about how the police work and how the DA work and how all this. The new district attorney for Fort Worth was encumbered. There was nobody running against her. She is the first female Republican district attorney of Fort Worth. And I actually spoke at her breakfast. So, but what I'm saying is the system works. But we think we can work partially in the system and think it's going to work for us instead of working wholly in the system.
Well, evidently you all don't get around much to see what's going on out here. You know, many young folks. Wait a minute. So many young folks are into tattoos. They're into all of this hair.
I know it's just a conversation every week. I understand that.
But if you understand that, most young people don't even think that they are supposed to. Let me finish, will you?
You can't say most of them be the truth.
Most of these young people, they don't even listen to what you all are talking about. They so into what they're doing,
truth, man. You can't say most of them be the truth.
Most what?
I said you can't say most of the young people and it be the truth that you're saying. I work with young people all over the nation, so I'm saying
when I look at how these kids are coming up, these kids are not. Most of these kids are not disciplined.
But you got to get outside your house and your community. Stop looking and start talking to them. See what the problem is. But you can't just come on the show. You can't come on the show and just be negative like most this and most that.
Well, you can call it negative if you want. I do a lot of things. I go to these schools. When I go to these schools, the teachers tell me that the parents don't even come up and see their children. You get more people going to church on Sunday, but you don't see these same people at their children's school on Monday. They think the church is more important than the school. And they really
here's the thing, though. In what you do in your community and in your station of life, don't you feel that what you do has some residual value to help someone that otherwise may not be able to get assistance or counseling or guidance? I mean, sometimes we can look at the totality of things in terms of what is going on in common versus maybe the unique situations that we have. I mean, I deal with youth in Chicago. I deal with at-risk youth in Chicago. So I can't buy into just throwing my hands up and saying that all these youth are doing this and doing that. Well, by and large, a lot of youth are into doing things and mischief and so forth, but not all youth are. And the ones that I have been able to work with,
I never said all youth.
But I understand what I'm saying is that I see the disparity. But in seeing that disparity, I have tried to formulate with groups and organizations that are positive, that are working with the youth that, in a sense, in your words, that are getting tattoos and basically listening to a lot of music and not really doing anything or caring. But I don't think that is always the case, but I also think that once you identify a population or a group of individuals or young individuals or anybody, I still go to Cook County Jail. I still go to a juvenile women's facility, juvenile lockup, because we're working with these young ladies and these young men and some of these adult men and women in the penal institutions so that they have a better outlook and they have some kind of platform when they come out versus just a revolving, recidivizing door. So we have to do what we can to try and make it a better tomorrow.
Let me ask you something, and you all can say what you want to say, but when you go and get these so-called education, go to the schools and get these educations, most people when they go to school and get educated, they get these degrees. They're looking for a position. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If they're looking for, who would you put somebody in a position that's going to go against you?
Okay,
to what degree are you talking about?
Okay,
you mean
let me
some
give you
things
a good
that
example.
we disagree on?
Let me give you a good example. Let me give you a good example. If you go into the police force, you have you're going to let me talk or what? I'm just trying to prove a point here. When you go into, like, the police department, you take an oath. And when you take that oath, you going to do what those white folks tell you to do. If your mother is out there protesting and you're a policeman and your mother is out there protesting about, say, this Brown case here, that means you have to shoot your mother with bullets, rubber bullets, or gas your mother. You took that oath. Now, if you don't want to do that, you won't have no position. Would you agree with that?
No, well, maybe in some cases, but I would not totally agree with that. If you since you're going to go down that path. I've been in the military for 27 years. There's a thing that's called unlawful order.
Right quick.
Have I disobeyed an order to me because it was unlawful? Yes, I have. Why? Because I actually have a backbone instead of gummy worms in my backbone. It's also to the degree of if you're going to stand. Now, some people going to stand because they have to have that paycheck. But, sir, I've stood in the face and I've lost my position. I've been bankrupt. I've been on public aid because of principle. So not everybody is going to bend over because the only way somebody can ride your back is if you bent over. If you're willing to stand for what is right, that means that when you take that oath, it has to be real, not just some words you're saying.
Can you name me anyone that's in a position will speak out like Malcolm X? Name him.
Okay,
do you think Clarence Thomas? Would speak out like?
I'm not expecting him to. He's a political figure.
Well, how the heck can you go anywhere?
Caller.
I
wanted to wonder tonight, so I can't really argue with you a whole lot. But let me go here because we're getting off topic.
I don't care about you, because what you talk, all that radio talk, all this talk about voting and that is still.
Okay, yeah, listen. I'm really under the weather. I don't know what's wrong with the caller tonight, but I respect his views. But tonight, I just don't have the strength to argue. We're talking about the topic you just tuned in. You come to the station, and we're talking about the topic when the lawless is the law. And basically what we're talking about tonight is the fact that the system is broken. We're talking about the fact that when we have no confidence, in our system, in our judicial system, when we feel the courts are not working, when we feel our police department is not working, when we feel like every aspect of the system is broken, what do you do? And that's what we're talking about tonight. And I just don't have the energy tonight to do the back and forth with that caller tonight, because I think we really need to stay on topic because we keep losing focus every week when we choose these topics. And I think where I'm at tonight is this: I have no problem saying that that I think the president has got to do more, and I think, AJ, contrary to what you said, I don't blame the president. I just think if every other group has made a demand, we have the right as a people who helped to elect him to make a demand as well. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I just think if we let a president that we helped to elect stay in office for 8 years and he doesn't do anything for black people, but he has helped Hispanics and he's helped gays, then that would be crazy for us. I mean, what are we thinking? The thing is, you receive not because you ask not. So, we'd be crazy, to not say, Mr. President, we've been very patient. We're sitting over here in the corner. We need you right now, and we need you to help with this situation because it's out of hand. Everybody in the world sees that. police brutality in America is out of hand. And so I guess I don't see anything wrong with that. Listen, if you're in the listening audience tonight and you'd like to chime in, call in at 347-850-8390. Am I wrong for asking that we as African Americans put a demand on the president?
But, Kheri, I didn't say anything was wrong with it. I didn't say anybody was blaming him. I was just saying that it's like electing a sheriff and nobody got him any guns or any bullets, because we actually did our job when we were voting for president. We just didn't participate in anything else that would be a supportive entity around him, because you've seen him, everything that he was trying to do for, because if he was president for the people and he's trying to do things right for the people, that would also affect us. But he hasn't been able to do anything at any point in time about anything because he hadn't had supporting cast.
Oh, hold on. Wait a minute. He helped the Hispanic people with immigration. He helped the gay people with gay marriage, so he did do something.
And also, I think it's a on one hand, I understand. That's kind of like when they say separation of church and state. I understand. As soon as you say that the president should do something for black folks, they say, well, he's the president of everybody. Well, why is it that our same leadership in the White House and Congress and the Senate can appropriate $37,680,000,000 every year as part of the annual fiscal budget between 10 or more countries, with Israel being at the top, with getting $2.3 billion in foreign aid every year? Now, that's specific to a country. So if they can do this for countries from Israel to Colombia and give them foreign aid, and I'm saying this in relationship to black folks, then I think that our leadership, under the circumstances that black folks have had to endure, that they could do something for black folks dealing with laws, dealing with police brutality, and so forth. The president then appropriated he's requesting $75 million so that police officers have the body cameras. But nothing was touched on police brutality, on police misconduct, on malicious prosecution. So that's my issue. Okay, fine. I would have rather that some of those million went towards Congress reviewing some of the laws that insulate the leadership. So I think on any given day that, yeah, the president is the president of everybody, but then I believe also they just touched on immigration reform. That's specific to a culture, because it wasn't really dealing with Haitians or Africans trying to come over to this country. It was basically dealing with Hispanics and Latinos. So, I mean, I think I think we get a trick bag. We get tricked into believing that we should not ask us stuff as black folks. And I think that as long as we do that, we won't get what we possibly could get. And the last thing I'll say is that with leadership, with having a black attorney general and with having a black president, it should be even more sensitive to the needs of blacks. So to me, that shows a disproportionate lack of concern about the socioeconomics and the treatment of black folks. In a sense, you black, we give you yours, we give you your marching orders, so you do what we tell you to do. And you throw the black folks a few trinkets, but you keep them at bay, and you don't do full-fledgling things that's actually going to constitute something. Because I can tell you, if the tables were turned and these were our white brothers and sisters, I guarantee you they would be on their leadership, but specifically the president, that you're going to do something about this, and they would not be asking. They would be demanding.
And let me go on record here and say, though, anybody who's not of African descent or African American, who thinks police brutality is just about black people, is delusional. From what I'm seeing on YouTube and everywhere else and in the media, they ain't just beating down black people. They ain't just shooting black people. We're getting more, but looks like it's starting to cross all color lines, all age lines, all everything. So my thought to anybody who's thinking it's a black problem, you're delusional. And I would say to you, when we make that demand, you need to be standing behind us. And that's Latinos, that's Europeans, that's whatever other group you're in, Asian, you need to get in line. Because I've seen white men, I've seen Asian men, I've seen black men, I've seen white men, all being affected by police brutality. Would y'all agree with that? I mean, it ain't just a black issue. We are affected more often, but looks like right now we got more rogue cops going around than the law can allow, and it's catching everybody. Would y'all agree with that, AJ and Christopher? With everybody?
No, I agree. I'm saying, but the only point I was trying to make earlier is that there should be a demand from us in writing and every ability and everything from Congress, from the Black Congressional Congress, which met not too long ago on something. I'm not for sure what they were meeting on because they just showed them in a meeting. But I'm saying there's a lot of things that should be a demand on us. My only point was that in order for us to change things in this particular system, we have to begin participating in this particular system. Because we can change the system, but you can't change something that you're not participating in.
You know, and I hear that, and I hear that, and let me add something. You know, I saw a whole lot of photo ops this week since the Eric Garner decision, and I saw a whole lot of congressional people standing on the Capitol Hill with their hands up saying, you know, don't shoot, and the Mike Brown, you know, salute, don't shoot, and all this. Get that, and love the photo ops, but we need y'all to do more too. I mean, if I see one more person, you know, with the hands up, don't shoot, or I can't breathe T-shirt, you know, that's one of our leaders, we appreciate all those photo ops when you show us that you're, like, I guess, supporting, you know, the cause. But I would more like to see my elected officials standing on the floor, making some demands about some laws be changed rather than doing the photo ops on Capitol Hill with their hands up saying don't shoot. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, because, you know, it's real, I don't know, trendy now, you know, to wear the I Can't Breathe T-shirts and to do the photo ops with the hands up. But that's not getting the laws changed. And I think if our entire, you know, Congress, our entire Senate, you know, came together and said, hey, you know, we got to do something, I think we'd have some different laws on the books. But I don't see that happening. I think I've heard, what's her name, Nasheed, out of St. Louis, working on a bill, but I haven't seen any final plans. Has anybody else? Do y'all know what I'm talking about? She's allegedly working on some plans or some law is going to change and deal with police brutality. We need to see that ASAP.
I'm saying I heard they was working on it, but I'm in agreement with you. And see, that's why I'm saying as far as participating in the system, what I meant is that when we have people, you know, when you register to vote, and when you have a large number of people in a community register to vote, Republicans will come to your church and talk to you. They will come to your community and have open forums because they know you have a voice. See, all of these registered voters are supposed to be participative in this one voice that we send to wherever we send it to speak for us. When we don't participate, we have nobody speaking for us. So the demands that we're talking about are made because the people that we're sending up aren't speaking for us.
Then, you know, this is where I'm going to go with that. And I agree with what you said. I know that's the way, you know, no need in trying to reinvent the wheel. So I know that if you really want to have some power in this country, you know, you need to be a registered voter. Get that and be a person who's exercising that right. But at the same time, if you never vote in this country, they still have a right to protect your life from a rogue cop who's getting out there shooting people just because he can. So as an American, you have the right, you know, not to be shot and killed because you're walking in the middle of the street. So, you know, I hear that and I understand the concept, but there's a lot of people who cannot vote because they have previous felonies or whatever. So we can't say just because you've had a felony, if you've worked your life out and you're on the right track, just because you can't vote shouldn't take away from the fact that you need your political officials or your president to work out this issue with this police brutality before anybody else is killed.
It shouldn't, Kheri, but America was still with 3 Ks before, up until recently.
America was what?
Spelled with 3 Ks up until recent times. It was built with 3 Ks in it.
I think it still has 3 Ks if you want to put it like that. But and that's another thing. The KKK's presence all of a sudden is very disturbing to me. They had been laying dormant for years. Now all of a sudden, since the Mike Brown situation, they surfaced, and we're finding, police officers in membership with the KKK, and the KKK is threatening to patrol the streets of Ferguson. Listen, anytime you're a law enforcement officer, if you are a member of a hate group, common sense should tell somebody that your oath and your membership with the KKK, they're conflicting. You can't take an oath and say you're going to protect and serve somebody you hate. I can't see how that can happen. And any time a police chief in Florida is fired because he and another officer, they both were fired because they were members of the KKK, something's wrong. When we got the KKK deeply embedded in law enforcement, how can we ever expect police brutality to end? It's not going to. So I say anybody who's a member of a law enforcement agency, if you have an affiliation or a membership with a hate group, you can't be in law enforcement because we can't trust your decision-making. It's that simple. I know if anything I truly hate, I don't do well around. If I truly hate something, it affects my judgment. It blurs my judgment. And so I can't imagine anybody who says they hate me because of the color of my skin, I can expect not to shoot me if they can get away with it, not to kill me if they can get away with it, not to lie and say that I did something that I didn't do if they can get away with it. So I don't know how in the world we expect law enforcement to ever be a profession that we can respect if we got the KKK deeply embedded in it. Which I agree with that. There's something's wrong if that's the case. Okay.
It's yes. In terms of what you're asking and saying, I believe yes. Unfortunately, a lot of the organizations that have civil authority have, I think, not just racial overtones, but they have people that are actually down to the core, to the bone racist, that actually have a component of power and control and significant influence. And I think that's where people, again, this is where people are tricked. When the term racist is used, that's a very common word and a common label that most people do not understand. Racism, or a racist by definition, but also by fact, is an individual or individuals or set of circumstances used by those individuals to control, to significantly influence, and that can be through laws, through socioeconomic and so forth. So most folks that we're dealing with, we're fighting the wrong enemy. They have a racist mentality, but they're not racist. But now a police officer has more of the propensity to be a racist because there are a lot of things that are at that individual's disposal that they can invoke that will have undue harm or repercussions on your life. But somebody just calling you a nigger or a negro or this or that, that's a racist comment. But that person's not a racist. They just called me a name. That's a racist mentality. So, but the police And a lot of the KKK figured out after Reconstruction and black folks pushing for the right to vote and basically be at the table, they figured out that the lynching and the scare tactics and a lot of what was perpetuated no longer could work. So now they basically did, in a sense, they changed careers, they switched hats, and they were able to get in to predominantly civil authority positions or government positions that then they could evoke some things. J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, some of these people have a long family lineage of racists and members who were members of the KKK and a lot of other racist orientated organizations. So it's hard. I think it's hard to separate. I mean, we know that exists. These police officers were fired because they were, active members with the KKK. So that is a proponent, and it is one that is difficult to out people because, again, there probably are some black officers that may know some white officers are part of these organizations, but for different reasons they probably don't out them. Just like when they see certain circumstances. And things that they should do something about, in a lot of cases they don't because of retaliation.
I agree. We're going back to the phone lines, area code 770-807. Good evening, you're on the stage.
Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for taking my call. I'm going to try to paraphrase what you said a moment ago, but let me understand if I got what you said a few moments ago correctly. You said black people or black men shouldn't be shot for walking in the middle of the street. Who was shot for just walking in the middle of the street?
Mike Brown.
No, he wasn't. That's not why he was shot. It's not true.
Do you know something we don't know? Why was he shot?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, why was he shot?
Yes, ma'am. I read almost every one of the witness counts in the grand jury, including one who they said lied, including that one. I also read the autopsy report, 3 autopsy reports, the federal autopsy report, the autopsy report from Michael Baden, hired by the family, and the St. Louis County Medical Examiner's report. I read many of the trial transcript, or the information that was available that was released from the prosecutor, McCullough. And the reason he was shot is because apparently, from all of this evidence, he was attempting to disarm Officer Wilson. He almost disarmed him. When Officer Wilson went after him, he turned around and charged him again with an apparent attempt to disarm him again. And Officer Wilson, not willing to chance that, shot him. But I don't know what that had to do with him being in the middle of the street.
Okay, well, here's the thing then. What was the motive in trying to disarm this police officer in the first place?
Sir, I cannot read a dead man's mind. I don't know. The evidence seems to indicate that's what he tried to do for whatever reasons that are known to him or unknown to him now that he's dead. Unless I hold a seance, I don't think I will ever know.
Well, I can tell you this. You don't have to hold a seance not to say. You don't have to hold a seance to come to the conclusion that what you just said didn't make any sense. Because,
ma'am, I just cited evidence, and you told me it makes no sense. Okay, fine. All right.
I'll let you finish.
Okay, I guess so then.
Yeah, let me finish. First of all, you got 2 grand jury witnesses that came up dead. And I understand both of those grand jury witnesses testified against Officer Darren Wilson. So if that's the case, obviously there's some questions surrounding what they said about Darren Wilson that didn't go over well. So how is it that you can take the account of a woman that they say has psychological problems who basically took her testimony from the pages of the newspaper? How can you say that she's accurate when 10 other witnesses said just the opposite?
Okay, ma'am, I'm going to disregard her testimony. Apparently, it is tainted. It does not appear to be credible or reliable. I have now taken her from my consideration of the evidence against Officer Wilson. Now, there are other witnesses who are left whose credibility has not yet been seriously called into question. I am not going to disregard those witnesses. Her testimony did not negate the other witnesses whose testimony still remains uncontroverted to this point.
Okay, who are those people? What witnesses
Well, let's
are
see.
you
Witness number 10. Witness number. They only have numbers, ma'am. They don't have names. Remember, grand jury proceedings are ostensibly. I'm looking at the transcripts, ma'am, from witness number 10. Witness number 4.
Witness number 40 should be discounted, right? Because she
I'm
lied,
going to
right?
discount it. I'm completely. She is not being considered by me in my evaluation and my analysis.
Okay. So
witness number 10 still is, though. I'm still considering witness number 10 credible. I'm considering other witnesses, the other 5 witnesses who backed up Officer Wilson's account. I'm still considering them credible until I no longer have a reason to consider them credible. I have a reason to disregard this woman you just told me have, and consequently, I have discarded her credibility. She does not count to me anymore. The others are still there. They still have not been controverted as of yet.
And so with that, you have established that Mike Brown was the agitator, Officer Wilson was the victim, and so therefore that's why Mike Brown is deceased.
Officer Wilson conducted, from every indication I've read, I studied hundreds of police shootings, ma'am. Hundreds. Let me say it again. Because it was my job to instruct police officers in the use of deadly force and firearms usage. Hundreds. I was at 2 shootings, present at 2 police shootings where I was shot at. Fortunately, I never had to shoot anyone as a police officer, but believe me, I know this subject backwards and forwards, and believe me, ma'am, I believe from the bottom of my soul, to a moral certainty, to an absolute positive, based on everything I've been able to deduce thus far, Officer Wilson's shooting of Mike Brown was absolutely and completely, totally justified. I have no moral qualms whatsoever about it, but I am prepared to change my mind if I get new credible evidence that it was not so. Unlike many of you who have, no matter what evidence you see.
On that subject, and that's to be very appreciative that you spent the time doing the research and you came to that conclusion. But on the other hand, it doesn't sound like you have ever said anything about police misconduct on the rise, police brutality on the rise, and basically the police state. I've never heard you say anything about that.
Well, I'm still trying to deal with Mike Brown, I was being challenged. Now, why don't you ask me? Why don't you ask me my feelings about that?
Basically defending another police officer, and you said nothing about police misconduct, police brutality, and basically those other aspects that are also facts, but you said nothing about that.
Sir, would you care to ask me? And I will be happy to tell you. You didn't do that, however, and you didn't ask me.
You didn't say anything about it either, which is one of the biggest pieces of this case.
Sir, right
now,
there are
allegations of this case as well. Not just the other facts. These are facts about the case as well.
Sir, I'm prepared to. Would you allow me to?
Sure, I sure would.
All right. Now, see, I'm a constitutionalist and a conservative. I'm stone cold, absolute constitutional conservative. And I believe government, no matter what area of government it is, all of it needs questioning constantly because the tendency toward tyranny is government out of control. So therefore, no agency, more so than the police, except perhaps the armed forces and a few others, needs more scrutiny than the police do. Because if you let them get out of control, you are opening the door to tyranny. So therefore, eternal vigilance is a price of liberty, and I believe absolutely the police actions must be constantly scrutinized and questioned. Now, that's my answer to you. I believe that too.
Listen, first of all, you got to listen to the host when she calls, she tries to jump in. Okay, first of all, logically, Mr. Ex-police officer, with all of your training, when in your whole experience as a police officer has a person who was unarmed ever turned around that was running away from you, then turned around and charged towards you and you're shooting at him? When have you ever seen that happen? And how?
Let me see. I'm going to get my course syllabus out. I'm answering your question. I'm going to answer your question. I have a course syllabus in the other room. It's a 3-binder notebook with shootings where police officers shot unarmed suspects. Because that was a course. When I was doing my classes and doing my research, I would also say, because there are times when a police officer is justified in using deadly force to shoot an unarmed suspect. And by the way, there is no such thing in police shooting as an unarmed encounter, because every single encounter that you deal with the suspect is armed, because you bring the gun to the encounter. 10% of police officers who are killed in the line of duty are killed with their own firearm. Okay? So there's no such thing. So to answer your question, I have several such incidents.
Okay, let's be clear. Mike Brown died 148 feet from Officer Wilson's vehicle. Okay? So let's be clear. It wasn't 35 feet. It was 148 feet. So you mean to tell me that let me finish. You mean to tell me that Mike Brown traveled 148 feet running away from Officer Wilson only to turn around and charge back at him and he's shooting at him? So that makes no
that's what the evidence appears to show. Yes, that's what I mean to tell you. And
when was when was the first gunshot wound inflicted? See, that's the other thing. And it wasn't when he was fleeing or in a sense coming at the officer.
No, sir. Inside the squad car, the wound to the ventral part of his right thumb. His right thumb had a wound on it. In fact, the gunshot residue deposited on the wound was so close, it did not leave a pattern in the wound known as stippling. Stippling occurs when a gunshot wound is close, but it's further away than contact distance. It's a pattern of dots around the wound. This wound was so close, it was literally contact range, and it left scorching on the wound. That's what the gunshot residue did. It didn't even leave stippling. So the first wound was inside the squad car, apparently in the fight for Officer Wilson's gun. There was also blood spatter from Mike Brown's wound from his hand on the inside of the squad car and on Officer Wilson's
because you're saying
uniform.
Conclusive evidence, and I know you're saying that this is an autopsy and so forth. In terms of that being the case, what I guess maybe my small mind doesn't understand is that means that when he was fleeing, he was already wounded. At that point, where was the threat unless at that point, at some point, that the officer got out the vehicle and then was chasing him?
Yes, he was. That's what I'm trying to tell you, but I was stopped before I could explain that. Yes, it would appear Officer Wilson got out of the car, began his pursuit, again, corroborated by his account and eyewitnesses who testified to essentially, the ones that we have not controverted yet. I'm not talking about the crazy lady who lied under oath, who should be charged with perjury by the...
Well, let me jump in then. And I'd like to put in right at this point, if he feared in the vehicle that Mike Brown looked like a monster, something that just he was so fearful of, what made him get out of the vehicle without calling dispatch and asking for a backup and pursue the young man on foot? Okay, now I'll let you finish.
Okay, it's a very simple thing, ma'am. I'm a combat veteran of 2 wars. I was terrified all the time, scared to death. I saw men die in front of my eyes, and I didn't want to do my duty because I might get killed or wounded too. And I was terrified. Despite that, occasionally my platoon leader would kick me in the behind, get me moving. I did my duty. Officer Wilson was scared, yet and still he felt he had to do his duty to go after this man and apprehend him. And he did it. Despite his fear.
Wait a minute. Do his duty. You've already inflicted a gunshot wound to an individual who is fleeing you. At that point, I mean, I've been in the war as well myself. I'm a combat veteran too. The one thing that is not clear to me in terms of the additional shots that were fired, it seemed like that the individual, Mr. Brown, that was running away, then knew that he was going to be shot again, which is possibly the reason that when he was not able to get away, he then turned around to surrender. And you're saying, it's just clear that he was charging at him. I think the other negative that is a blight that people also was rushing to judgment, not against the officer but against Mr. Brown, is the video clip. Technically, that was supposed to be earlier, showing him basically strong-arming in the shop. I think when things like that are released, it muddies the water, and then people start saying thug, and then it's easier to then validate something that I believe was wrong in misconduct that a police officer committed, because that was conveniently vetted and put on TV to essentially make Mr. Brown look like he was going to get killed or he was going to commit a crime at some point in life, so it was just as better that he was killed or injured at this point.
Well, sir, again,
I say every character assassination, it's easier to say lead poisoning instead of murder.
Well, again,
absolutely. And by the way, let's not fail to mention this point too, because since we're talking about facts, all cases in Ferguson that have ever been brought before the prosecutor McCullough, if I'm reading the information right, he has never once actually filed felony charges against a police officer, nor go to the grand jury to request them. So he has a long history of basically protecting the police, because a prosecutor has the ability to basically charge you even before it goes to the grand jury. The grand jury basically has to authenticate that, but we also know 9 times out of 10, once the prosecutor wants it, they're usually going to get it, because that's how the cards are stacked.
Well, sir,
and the cards are also stacked, like I said before, with police officers, because they have partial or full prosecutorial immunity, which is good in some cases but bad in others, because I think it's bad in the cases when then police officers can perpetuate bad conduct because they know when they do commit something that it's basically going to be the taxpayer footing the bill to defend them.
Well,
and
sir,
they, in most cases, won't receive civil penal lawsuit against them anyway. And I should know because I'm fighting the Chicago Police Department now. So I don't agree with everything that is on the table. And I also think, based on the historical background, that a lot of things in terms of evidence versus witnesses, a lot of things have always been tampered, and black folks have never received a fair share at the table. So to say that the race issue or the misconduct issue of the authorities to make things seem a certain way is not on the table, and that we've reached post-racism in this country is a fallacy. And it's quite easy and convenient for someone who, if it was their son that this happened to, I dare say they wouldn't be such on a soapbox to validate what Officer Wilson did. And that always becomes a focal point with people, because until you're wearing those pair of shoes, it's easy to say some things. But let your son or daughter end up that way, and I bet you'll be up in arms.
Well, sir, you said quite a few things that I could respond to, and I would like to if you would allow me to. First of all, if you have any evidence of prosecutorial misconduct, or anyone knows of any evidence of prosecutorial misconduct by Mr. McCullough, they need to bring it to the appropriate authorities to have him charged, either brought up on evidence.
First of all, callers, do not call and mislead this audience. You know and I know that the grand jury was given misleading instructions for over 3 months. They were told that it was lawful for a police officer to shoot a fleeing suspect, when that is actually not the case. And that was only corrected just before they made their decision, and the papers were switched out. But the assistant prosecutor, the assistant DA, did not explain the differences in the document, and they had been bombarded with all types of evidence up to that point. They had no way of knowing the difference unless they meticulously went back and reviewed what the difference was. It was her job to tell them what she had told them was misleading down to every single detail, and she did not do that. Secondly, Bob McCullough was not supposed to wear a hat of anybody other than the prosecutor. It was not his job to be the defense attorney and everything else, and the spokesperson for Darren Wilson and the person who collected money for his foundation. He wore way too many hats. So if you want to say prosecutorial misconduct, absolutely, Bob McCullough is guilty. Now you can finish, but don't mislead this audience. Do not call in and intentionally lie to the audience about what actually happened in this case.
So, ma'am, I don't think I've lied about a single thing I said. In fact, I can prove I haven't, because what you're referring to is the Tennessee versus Garner decision of 1986. And, yes, the instructions given to the jury were in conflict with that ruling by the Supreme Court that holds the police may not perform a Fourth Amendment seizure of a suspect by shooting him dead if he's fleeing presents no imminent danger to the police or to the public. I'm fully aware of that ruling, and I'm fully aware of the issue you're speaking of with regards to the grand jury. As you pointed out, though, it was corrected, albeit late in the day, but it wasn't a case of shooting a fleeing suspect. What happened with Officer Wilson, according to everything I could discern in my considerable experience of 15 years as a self-defense and police firearms instructor, it was a simple case of self-defense. It had nothing to do with attempting to apprehend Mike Brown, a civilian, or rather a citizen. Our police civilians do. I mean, any citizen could avail themselves of self-defense under the same criteria that Officer Wilson used to shoot Mike Brown. Didn't have anything to do with the statutes in Missouri on a police officer's use of deadly force to apprehend a suspect. It was self-defense.
It was self-defense to shoot a man execution style for jaywalking in the middle of a
Man, he didn't shoot him execution style. That's not true.
We're going to have to agree to disagree. And again, the police and police officers, cops, they tend to cover for each other. Even when this happened to me, I told you, having in the military, state troopers, police, sheriffs, they all sided with one another. They seemed to find convenient reasons to justify why what I did was wrong when I didn't commit a crime. So it doesn't matter what case that it's in. They'll find a way to fabricate or to put together what they say is the real facts. And again, you said the preponderance of, police misconduct, it does happen, and we have to be vigilant. But the bottom line is that the issue of police under whistleblowers actually talking and telling the truth and saying what really goes on in the jailhouse and so forth is the furthest thing from the truth in terms of people telling the truth. So I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree. You want to believe that? I'm not buying it. I think he just outright murdered him, and that's my opinion. So I think that's kind of like the end. There's really no further discussion because we're not going to be able to prove anything one way or the other.
Yeah, and that's why. Remember, the grand jury only has to determine probable cause. Probable cause is a much lower standard than beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, if a grand jury can't even determine probable cause on a crime, how do you think they're going to determine beyond any reasonable doubt and convince 12 members of a jury?
If this had been a case of a citizen having to shoot a police officer for something, I can guarantee you that the prosecutor would have had no problem basically charging that individual with a felony, attempted murder, or if not murder. So I don't buy that. And the bottom line was that from the onset, there was no... The prosecutor was not going to do that. He hadn't done it in 23 years as a prosecutor. Even cases of where a police officer was brought before to be charged, he didn't do it. And he wasn't going to start now. So that's fine. And again, we'll have to agree to disagree.
Well, perhaps they should review Mr. McCullough.
I'm going to make this final point. First of all, you said probable cause. They couldn't come up with probable cause. Did you not forget they were not even given a charge? This prosecutor did something that never happened. He never even gave them the charges to consider. He threw a pile of evidence in the laps of absolute rookies They were not trained prosecutors. They were not trained lawyers. And he said, y'all figure it out, and y'all come back and tell me what charge you want to charge him with. That never happened. So, in my opinion, Bob McCullough did everything he could to intimidate this grand jury, to confuse them, to mislead them, and then he expected them to come out with the right decision. Be for real. Be for real. Where does that happen? It doesn't.
If they get new evidence, they can always reconvene a new grand jury, and or the governor can appoint a special prosecutor, and they can attempt to reconvene a grand jury and attempt to re-indict him again. The door isn't necessarily closed. They advise them to come up with new evidence before they try to do it again.
But I don't think in that Klan meeting they're going to actually do that.
You said what, AJ?
I said I don't think when they're in the Klan's meeting they're going to actually talk about having a conversation on that particular subject.
Well, it's not. The door isn't closed yet. Statute of limitations isn't up on whatever they think he did. Whether it's, as you put it, as murder, there is no statute of limitations on murder. On negligent homicide, it's probably about 6 to 8 years in Missouri. On a voluntary manslaughter, it's probably similar. The door remains open for an indictment with the appropriate evidence.
And that's probably why 2 of the grand jury witnesses have come up deceased, because they do not want them to speak.
Well, who killed them, ma'am? Are you saying that the authorities murdered them now? Really? Oh, really?
I don't know who.
Okay.
I don't. Who killed them?
Anything is possible. Please, see again.
So therefore,
we're at that where we think it's so post-slave, post-racial that these things just possibly don't happen. Everybody who's in civil authority or state or federal office, elected officials, they would never do anything like that.
I will never
just go
say
ask Martin Luther
anything.
King's family, Malcolm X, FBI, CIA. So we don't even have to go there. What did J. Edgar Hoover do, who was a federal? He actually put a hit out on Dick Gregory. That's fact. That's fact.
I will never say we live in a post-racial
it doesn't
society.
matter. You sit here and you insulate, I think, bad behavior. Because you're trying to say in this case it was a clear matter of self-defense. You don't speak to that the police officer was basically the one that initiated in an aggressive nature. You act like he just, please, Mr. Brown, you're walking in the middle of the street. Will you just please get out of the street? So, see, all those have tenets and flavors to what escalated to the situation.
You didn't ask me about that. Now you're responsible for something I made no comment about. I made no comment about that.
Kheri, you know what? Cop insulating a cop. That's the bottom line.
Amazing how you change the subject on something. I never even got a chance to respond because you never even asked me about that.
I'd be happy to do it.
I'd be happy to respond to that too.
We got to move on to caller 504, but you can hold on, and if we can get to that by the end of the show, we will. Area code 504. Good evening. You're on center stage.
Good evening. My name is Jamal. I am AJ's #1 right-hand man in poetry. However, we both have strong views about all of the political and civil issues that go on today. How y'all doing tonight?
Fine. How you doing?
Great. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I had to intervene as I was listening to the show. Who are you to take the side of an individual who has perpetuated a crime against someone and play this is how the rules go game? You cannot do this. The reason that black people instigated and with other people of color, this is going beyond black and white. This is not simply black and white. This is about humanity and civility within our society. How could you see these people be able to stop traffic for their viewpoints and then turn around and say, well, this is just simply about the rules of the game? No, you cannot do that. In your heart of hearts, as much as you will choose to disagree with me the moment I stop talking, sir, you have to fully understand that you are beyond wrong and the actions were beyond reprehensible. And what we're talking about is an individual and individuals, plural, who decide to go out amongst the public and do solely to the position of their job, commit murder. It's not one. It's not two. This has replicated itself too much in a short amount of time. Usually, we have to wait from Emmett Till to Rodney King. We have not even had to wait for that amount of time for these crimes to be perpetuated, from Mike Brown to Eric Gardner to Tamir Rice. These individuals are being murdered on the streets. Stop your concept of stability that doesn't exist and examine the reality that exists for us all. People are losing lives. Don't tell me point, counterpoint, as if we are simply on a debate show. We're not talking about the Dallas Cowboys versus the Patriots. This is real life. Sir, I implore you, re-examine. Don't sit back and state facts because the man told you something. You said, well, you didn't give me a chance to debate that. Forget that. Leave that concept in your mind that wants to debate this individual alone. The emotion that is being thrown and thrust and for some reason as being accepted as righteous and true in our time. Because our emotions were so long denied and thrown as if they were nothing, except that people are being murdered in the streets. Don't sit in your glass house and consider whether or not you will throw a stone to the people who are saying this is wrong. Please, oh please, I'm going to shut up and listen. I appreciate your show. I listen in the blog talk as much as I can, and I know I'm over talking. I apologize.
Caller 770, respond to the caller.
Oh, I'm happy to. More than happy to. He's not going to like my answer, but I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to be honest. Now, emotions, lynch mobs are pretty emotional too, but I always give them short shrift when it comes to the rule of law and maintaining the concept of innocent until proven guilty. That happens to be a higher truth to me than the one you were speaking of when you spoke of your little narrative and told me I should disregard everything else in service of what you apparently feel is a higher truth that's meant to negate the facts and the law. Sir, I'm not participating in the apotheosis of Mike Brown. You're going to have to go there without me, and I'm sure you'll be able to succeed in whatever objective you have in your mind without me. But I promise you, I won't be there with you. I am going to stick with the facts and the law as I can best discern them. And I'm sorry if you don't like it. I'm not saying
and that's okay. We're not confrontational about it. That's fine. That's the American right.
To the detriment of life, you're willing to go with point, counterpoint on points of law.
Yes, sir. You better believe it. Yes, I am.
You're willing to go to the detriment of life because it's only black people getting killed.
Yes.
My son.
You know what? With individuals like him, you don't have to try and validate or prove anything. Again, it's a historical background that black folks have had to deal with. So in this case, we will have to agree to disagree, and we can move on.
That's for sure, because we do not agree on this. This is simply a matter. I think that this is being. Now I'm going to stray from the facts. I'm going to stray from the law. Now I'm interjecting my personal opinion, and that is this is being ginned up by the racial industrial complex to foment racial grievance to the detriment of truth and the law. And that's what this is, and I believe it absolutely.
If it only if everyone gets a fair shot.
It is racially based and bound not to give black folks due process, then it's already unscripted, and it's already invalid, and it's already unfair.
Oh, it's scripted.
So you're right. We can sit here for days, but the bottom line is that black men that commit the same crime as their white counterparts are disproportionately sentenced, harassed, profiled, and so with that being in mind, to ask black folks to actually just sit back and trust the current system, you're out of your mind.
Well, that's not true either.
Now you say innocent to proven guilty. That's
not true. That's not true. That's not true.
Sir, cops are innocent until proven innocent. Black folks are guilty until proven.
Well, I know some cops in jail right now for criminal conduct and corruption. I know them personally, and I've read of many cases where coppers go to jail quite properly for being criminals. I don't know why you think the rule of law doesn't apply to police. I'll admit, it can be difficult to get them because there are a lot of ways.
Even in clear-cut cases of misconduct,
but they just
speaking here from Cook County, it doesn't happen, sir.
I worked in Cook County in Chicago.
Because you're on the other side. You ain't been on my side. So when you get wrongfully arrested, when you have to institute that, when you have to institute lost wages and a lot of other things that happen, then you can come talk to me. Otherwise, you just a retired hiding behind a badge covering for another cop. You can't say nothing to me.
You know
so
what?
I just get down with you. So again, we have to agree to disagree, and we need to move on.
I agree. I think what this caller is going to happen to this caller, and if you're not careful, caller, I'll be honest with you, you're going to find yourself where fate is going to slap you in the face. I mean karma. I'm sorry, not fate. Karma is going to slap you in the face. You sound very much like the young man that took up for George Zimmerman in the trial, and he testified to the character George Zimmerman, and he went on and on about what a great guy George Zimmerman was, and he betrayed Trayvon Martin to be some thug that just basically got what he deserved, and Zimmerman, was the victim. Well, this Trayvon death, that man has lost 2 sons, and now he wants to rethink his testimony in court because he knew the lies that he told that helped George Zimmerman get off. And I would say to you, sir, you really need to research your heart. You need to search your heart and find it if you are, maybe not right within yourself. Maybe you're deep down racist. I don't know. But something is wrong when you can just blindly say that the cops are always right and everybody else is always wrong. I'm just going to put it out there. I really feel that. But I'm moving on. 314-726. Good evening. You're on center stage.
Good evening. I was just, this is Aki Baruti. I was just on my Facebook seeing that you're on the air tonight, and I was just calling to listen in and join in wherever I could join in.
Well, hi, Zaki. Listen, we're talking about the topic tonight. Basically, when the lawless is the law, and you all have seen that, you're down there in Ferguson, and you've seen how, so much corruption is going on from your prosecutor's office to the police department. What do we do when the lawless is the law?
Well, there's a number of things that we can do, in terms of the ultimate is try to put citizens' arrest on the police, but given the judicial system as it is, that would be rather tough. But we need to begin to steadily advocate for economic boycotts, in my humble opinion, to change the whole concept of policing in this country. And, in fact, I know there's out there, and I need to do a research for the upcoming year to push for the concept of $1 trillion boycott. And within that context, as well as the constant demonstrations that need to take place, and kind of like in South Africa where there was a movement where government became non-governmental. Couldn't govern because of the many kinds of demonstrations that was taking place. So those are some of the actions that I see, as well as being very involved politically. But you know what? Let me enter it, and this is going to be the topic of upcoming issue of our newspaper. And the theme will be police violence, America on trial, moving forward. How do we respond? And in terms of dealing with that as an issue, it's my position that as a race of people, we have to begin to collectively decide what would be our overall struggle around the issues as relates to, number one, reform. Should there be fundamental reform in this country? Or number two, to change all of the institutions in this country that impact us negatively through capitalism and imperialism, have a revolution or work toward a revolution, or last but not least, just give up on America like a number of black people have and move to the concept of separation as preached by both the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey along with many others, as well as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, where Garvey advocated that we return back to Africa, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad saying we ought to have a separate state as well as the Republic of New Africa in the South. So those are the fundamental questions going into the 21st century. There's a race that I think we need to resolve also.
You know what, Zaki, before you came on, we talked about, or I put it on the table, and maybe you can add this one to your list, maybe you can't. As a group, you know, we make up about 13% of the population. And I said as a group, you know, we helped to elect the first black president. And I think, you know, groups like the Hispanics have asked for immigration reform. We've seen gays ask for gay rights. And why can't we as black people ask the president to do something about police brutality by executive order if need be? And I think that it's really not just a black issue. I think if we made that demand, we'd be surprised who else would jump on the bandwagon and get behind us and ask that the president do more about police brutality.
Well, I totally agree. So to that end, there has to be a broad coalition of national organizations that put that call forward, you know, in terms of a delegation of the progressive organizations that feel to that end, and put it out there, you know, be it through demonstrations in front of the White House, be it sending an official letter requesting such. You know, here in St. Louis, I'm pleasant. One of the things that we are going to be claiming as an extension of one of our demands, and that when I say one of ours, this is a coalition coming out of the Ferguson crisis that started as the Justice for Michael Brown Leadership Coalition. Now we're projecting ourselves as simply Leadership Coalition for Justice. We had a 5-point demand, and one of those demands was for the federal Attorney General, Eric Holder, as well as the Missouri State Attorney, Chris Costa, to conduct an investigation into the racial discriminatory police stops practiced by a number of municipalities here in the St. Louis area, but probably all across the state. And I could probably say at least they have announced an investigation into such actions, which we put forward, you know, in terms of our position, and recognizing the ongoing, because here in the St. Louis/Ferguson area, there's been consistent agitation and resistance for over 100-some days. And, you know, most recently, too, our coalition had put out there about and boycott of Black Friday, Thanksgiving, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the recent holiday, Thanksgiving, and there was an 11% drop in sales across the country, and a lot of drop in the sales right here in the St. Louis area. So it's just a matter of will and that thought being put out and being actualized. There's some conversation about putting together a national meeting of the more, I guess you can say, left or radical organizations, and we're working on that. And I definitely, and if you serve as a reminder, we'll put that out as a task that we need to assume, and that's putting it, like you say, directly to the president as far as whatever powers he can to address the whole issue of police violence. But, you know, around police violence, if I may also add, we need to be clear when I was going back to the concept of reform, revolution, or separation. Under reform, you know, basically the system doesn't change, but we can get some immediate redress through those reforms. And what I would advocate as reforms around policing would, first of all, we need to embrace the concept of community control of the police. And when I speak of community control of the police, is broken down in several levels. One, we need to push out there the concept that police officers are to be chosen or appointed or hired through commissions made up of the people of communities. And that could be on further discussion. Secondly, that every police force in this country, wherever community that they work in, it should be the racial composition of that community should be reflected in the police force. Meaning, if a community is 67% black, then 67% black percent of the police force ought to be black, as well as they need to live in the community in which they work, and effective civilian review boards with subpoena powers and investigative powers be implemented as far as reform. So we have to have clear-cut objectives in terms of changing this whole climate of, the police and its interrelationship with black people.
Right, great. Ducky, how can people help out with what you all are doing with the Leadership Coalition for Justice?
Well, they could do a number of things. Number one, and please keep me reminded, because, I'm dealing with a number of different things, but we're going to be calling for a national march on Clayton. It's in Clayton, Missouri, is the county seat where Bob McCullough, who was just walking hand in hand with the killer cop, Darren Wilson. And it's a very affluent community, and the county seat for St. Louis, what is called St. Louis County, because St. Louis County is composed of, you got two, so folks are clear on the geographics. You got St. Louis City, which is separate from St. Louis County. St. Louis City, a population of about 400,000. St. Louis County, over 1 million plus, where you have 91 municipalities, little small cities comprising it. So Clayton is the seat, like the capital of the county, and that's where we'll be calling for this national march, so people can support us on that. And as soon as we settle on a date, our tentative date was January the 2nd, but we are probably going to change it. And people, wherever, if they're near us in terms of surrounding states or even other communities in the state of Missouri, can be there to support us. Also, they can send in donations to help our cause out. And we will be having a general number for that, but our organizations, which is part of the coalition, they can easily go to our website or send in donations to us, payable UAPO, P.O. Box 9226, St. Louis, Missouri. That's UAPO for Universal African Peoples Organization, P.O. Box 9226, St. Louis, Missouri. Or they could go to our website, which is www.uapo. Because, to put together these activities and this movement, it costs. And so, that's part of the struggle, is being able to finance, the messages that you need to get out here in society.
Okay, that physical address you said was UAPO, P.O. Box 9266, St. Louis, Missouri.
No. P.O. Box 9226, 16.
Okay, 9226, okay. And that zip code on that was?
63117.
63117. And so you all are asking for people to contribute to the cause. If people are not in the area, how can they be a part of it?
Well, people need to begin to, first of all, have discussions about how they feel that their police departments are to be, around the ideals that I'm just saying. Start discussion groups. And then they could look, for the day that we do our demonstration in Clayton, be doing simultaneous demonstrations in the communities that they are in. And the most important thing is that our people need to begin to build collectives, and when I say collectives, organizations of like-minded people who want to see a qualitative difference in, our lifestyle. And so I would challenge folks to everybody need to belong to some organization. And again, that's why I gave out my website in case we're looking to build chapters of our organization in various communities. And also they could reach us at our office number, which is area code 314-454-9005.
Becky, let me ask you, how, did it affect the community when the grand jury came back, with that 20-minute, demonstration by Bob McCullough and, all of that, and then coming back with the overall decision not to indict Officer Darren Wilson. What did that do for the community of Ferguson overall?
Well, it was a slap. It was a bruise to the face of the community. It's a slap in our face. And that outrage that you've seen through some of the buildings that were burned in the Ferguson area was a reflection of that outrage. The outrage that was reflected, I was part of a movement that closed down Interstate 44, which you may not have seen it on the TV, but we closed it down for at least an hour, was an expression of that outrage. The demonstrations at many of the malls that we were able to close down, I don't know if people outside this area were aware of that, but there was a movement around what I had spoke of earlier in terms of economic boycotts, but we had hundreds of folks in some of the local malls that had what was projected as die-ins, and the malls immediately closed. So that was all an expression, not only to Ferguson, to the entire St. Louis area, and it's a slap in the face to black people all across the country. Because, what happened here is directly related to what happened to the brother in New York, Eric Gardner, to what happened to the young brother in Cleveland, the young brother, Tamar White, what happened in San Francisco with, Oakland with Oscar Grant. We could go on and on and on as far as how they have shot and killed our young people, and so that's why I would encourage her. We cannot sit down at this hour, because if we sit down at this hour, then things will easily go back to where, and it still hasn't stopped. It never did stop for a moment, because we had 2 police shootings after the killing of Michael Brown here in the St. Louis area that was very suspect. So, the death and destructions of black people, bottom line, will continue until we get up until we get up as a people and really shut things down as need to be shut down in the sense of complete boycotts, which would possibly bring the business community into this fray, where they can start pressuring the police departments to have the basic reforms as I had projected earlier.
But haven't you all seen 2 murders in Ferguson since the grand jury decision? Haven't there been 2 murders in Ferguson since the grand jury decision?
By police officers?
Well, no, but we don't know by who. The young man that was found in the car with a gunshot to the head and his body burned, and the young man that was found in the... Right. There has been, right.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I wasn't aware of another one, that you were saying. Right.
We were told, I think his name is Sean Gray, who was found in the river down there. And we're very concerned about down there.
Yeah, that was in St. Louis. One of the concerns that there's been an undercurrent of conversation, not projected publicly, but we got that on the agenda to project. There had been a series of killings in the St. Louis area, which immediately they tried to label as black on black. But, I'm sure historically and even probably within some of those murders, they have been, because they're not solved. So that's not to say that they are all black on black. It could have very easily been KKK coming in, or it could have been even from some of the racist police forces, in terms of my speculation. And I'm just speaking on my speculation, along with some others who have like mine.
Well, y'all had private military contractors in there. Y'all had the Oath Keepers. Y'all had the KKK.
Wait a minute. Let me clear you up. You say y'all. It's not us as a people. You mean they had? Okay. All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. So they had private military contractors. They had the Oath Keepers. They had the KKK, all on the ground during the time of the grand jury decision. In history, have we ever seen law enforcement embrace that type of outside entities in a crisis situation like this?
Well, you say have that been in history? Yeah, it's been history. When you just have to read 100 years of lynching, where law enforcement was on the side of the lynchers, coming in and snatching our people out of the jail and burning them and hanging them and what have you. Tulsa riots, the riots of East St. Louis, and I usually don't use riots when they say the word riots, when they're saying there's a rebellion of our people. But those were riots of white folks victimizing black folks. So, yes, historically that has been the reality. So nothing basically, the American history has just morphed into a different form, as I say publicly anytime there's a mic in front of my face, that the KKK have shredded their uniforms of the white uniforms and melted into the police departments to carry out their heinous crimes against us as a people.
I so agree with that. And Becky, my last question is, y'all were talking about some recall elections coming up down there. Is that still in the plan, or have y'all decided against that?
That's a great question, and I just raised that as one of the key organizers. Is that was one of our calls for a recall, and that still is on the table. That hasn't actualized yet. We're working out some of the basic details, but again, you can keep me. I can keep you updated in terms of where that will be taking place and moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Becky, is there anything else you'd like for all of us that live outside of the St. Louis, Ferguson area? Is there anything else that we could be doing to help you and the other? Because Zaki Baruti is one of the leaders of the protesters down there. Is there anything that we that live outside of the St. Louis, Ferguson area could be doing to help you all besides giving to your donation, which we're going to do that, or I'm going to do that? And I advise everybody else to pitch in. What else can we do to help?
Well, I appreciate that. Number one, I'm a spiritual man, so first of all, keep the prayers up high, not just for Ferguson, just for the liberation of our people here in this country and throughout the world. Secondly, I'm saying that people need to make a badge of honor and join an organization. They can help us that way, because as we build organizations that put muscle on our arms to fight the fight that needs to happen, and then I also keep listening to your program to keep informed, and I'll be willing to, if folks need to some help in organizing, I'll be willing to come to their community to help. As long as they can help outset some transportation and housing. So as we had said earlier, just sending a donation and to help us keep the struggle going forward.
Wow. Y'all see Ferguson, it's just I call it the beginning, and we've got to realize that if Ferguson is not fixed, it's going to spray it. And Zaki have been on the ground since August 9th. Fighting this battle on the front lines. If you look at most of the photos of Ferguson, you will see Zaki in the front. He and Akbar Muhammad and some of the others, they're out on the front lines from day one, fighting. And so if you all would go to the website of www.uapo.com.
Yes.
Or call their organization at 314-454-9005. That's 314. I'm sorry?
You got it. I truly appreciate, and let me just say to you, God bless you. Keep up the work that you're doing, because information is knowledge, but once we get the knowledge, we got to transform that knowledge into some real sustainable action.
I agree. And listen, y'all, Zaki is reachable on Facebook. You're on Facebook. Are you on Twitter too, Zaki?
No, I'm just on Facebook. I'm one of these old throwbacks. I get on Facebook, not real often. I use it as sending out messages, what have you, but I am on Facebook under Zaki Baruti, and people can connect with me there.
Spell your name for them so they can find you on Facebook.
Zaki, that's Zaki Baruti, Baruti. B like in Baltimore, A-R-U-T like for Tennessee, I. And it's simply my cultural name that I adopted in 1980. It means charitable teacher, kind teacher by profession. I'm an educator. I've written a couple of booklets on education, very outspoken within the educational system, was taken out of the classroom because of my outspokenness. I've taken students with me to Africa and Jamaica, so that's the kind of teacher I was.
Wow. Well, listen, y'all reach out to Zaki, and he hadn't reached 5,000. Yeah, he hadn't reached 5,000 on Facebook yet, so y'all load him up on Facebook and get his name spelled Zaki, and then last name Baruti.
Yeah, did you say Zaki? K? Did you say K?
I did not say K. Zaki,
Baruti. Baruti.
Yeah. Zaki Baruti on Facebook, y'all. Like I said, he ain't reached 5,000 yet, so everybody befriend him on Facebook tonight to keep up with what's going on in Ferguson. He's one of the leaders on the front line, has been since day one. If you want to know what's going on in Ferguson, Zaki Baruti is the man to know. Listen, y'all, we got to get out of here tonight.
All right, thank you now.
Thank you, Zaki.
All right,
bye-bye. Bye-bye. We talked about the topic, when the lawless is the law. And we've, basically covered, things. It really hurts my heart, and I'll be honest with you, to say publicly that I no longer have confidence in the judicial system. I was somebody who studied criminal justice in college, and I really believed in the system way back then, but today I don't. And I don't believe that justice is fair for all. I think the late, great Johnny Cochran said the color of justice is green, and I truly do believe that, which is unfortunate, which means that we have a long fight ahead of us. But I think we, as black people, that is, should get together with our 13% and ask our president to do something about police brutality. I don't think that's asking too much. We helped to elect him, and we just want him to do something for the black community. And police brutality does not just affect black people. It affects all people. So that's just a challenge that I'm putting on the table, and I hope the rest of you all will join me with that particular struggle, because I plan to speak out about it often. Okay, guys, we got to get out of here tonight. I'm under the weather. I apologize if I sound terrible tonight. I feel terrible. But pray for me, and we'll see you next week, same time, same bad channel, right here, Center Stage. Good night.
You took my son away from me. You know how hard it was for me to get him to stay in school and graduate. You know how many black men graduate? Not many. Because you bring them down to this type of level where they feel like they don't got nothing to live for anyway.
Usually I might clown, but right now, this one's for Mike Brown, so pipe down. We gotta stop all the rioting in the streets. We ain't doing nothing but proving we animals to police. Another child dies, another mother cries. Another neighborhood left with a whole bunch of whys. Why did they pursue him? Why they had to shoot him? But I don't think that the answer is everybody looting. But forget that copy deserves state time. They let Zimmerman off. This cop ain't learned from Trayvon. I'm just sitting here dropping a little tear of knowledge. Cause Mike Brown ain't even lived to see a day at college. He would've started soon that there's an empty seat in class. All because of these demons hiding behind a bag. So screw that badge, screw your protection, and screw that law, carry your weapon. But some of these stores y'all looting is black owned. I know it's for a cause, but some of them still have families at home. It's not a black or white thing, it's about abusing the law. I can't imagine Dorian's face when he saw Mike fall. My tears wetting the page while I'm writing this. I know y'all so in tune, if you're not, why you fighting it? Just let go, let your heart beat and never lose control. And God rest his soul, cause I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown. He represent us all, we from a similar town. Walk them similar streets, we got similar police, so how I know I ain't gonna once my friend felt that shot, he turned around and he put his hands in the air and he started to get down, but the officer still approached with his weapon drawn and he fired several more shots.
I am Mike Brown, I am Sean Bell, I am Larry Davis bleeding in my dingy cell, I am Angelo Clark, I am Oscar Grant, I am Dante Price doing what you others can't, I am Bo Morrison, Melvin Lawhorn, I am the voice of these people cause they are long gone. Let's go behind the badge, far behind the beat, behind the politics, they wonder why we don't trust police, they wonder why we carry nines on us, they look for drugs but shoot for anything they find on us. I am Justin Sitt fighting for my life kicking, slowly dying cause police said I look suspicious. We are all of these people in so many ways. I am Raymond Allen left to die for 2 days. I just bought a new hoodie, guess I'm Trayvon. I am Dwayne Brown, lay down, try not to die. On the halls I feel my heart beating slower, listen. And all you dealing with is maybe gonna lose your pension. You might not notice this, but this the new form of lynching. I got my hands up, but still I see that cop inching. The mystery of this, I think I never know. Why they had to shoot him down, couldn't just let him go. The mystery of this, I think I never know. Why they had to shoot him down, couldn't just let him go. I am Mike Brown, he represent us all, we from a similar town. Walk them similar streets, we got similar police, so how I know I ain't gonna end up under a similar sheet. So I am Mike Brown, cause I'm out here with my homie. I'm just walking my block, man, everybody know me. So I am Mike Brown, I am Mike Brown, I am Mike Brown, homie, I am Mike Brown, I am
you
Mike
took
Brown.
my son away from me. You know how hard it was for me to get him to stay in school and graduate. You know how many black men graduate? Not many. Because you bring them down to this type of level where they feel like I don't got nothing to live for anyway. They're going to try to take me out anyway.